Hi and welcome back to my YouTube channel. If you are new here, my name is Hannah. I do reading / lifestyle. I'm so excited for today's video because y'all have to read this. So I purchased The Maidens by Alex Michaelides. We'll say Alex M. He is also writer for The Silent Patient, which is one of my favorite thrillers. It's the first book that I read to kick off me reading as a hobby. And I've only been reading it for 2 days. Oh my god. It's so freaking good. So I want to read the rest of the book with you, and you're going to follow along to see all the reactions. If you don't want spoilers, do not watch this video. Before I get started, I want to show you this is my current reading setup. That's my favorite chair that I love from Wayfair. I got this this lamp from my neighbor's curb. I believe it's actually a Target lamp, so yeah, I got it for free. This is going to be my footrest with my Kindle Fire, and that's a little book pillow that tilts it and stuff. Of course, we gotta have our Starbucks, so pumpkin spice. This is gonna be my reading setup probably for the next 4 or 5 hours while I finish this book. This is currently my tripod for my camera. Since this is not going to be a full reading vlog, I have to catch you up on everything that's happened so far. This book follows Tara, who's a student at St. Christopher College, and her best friend is Zoe. And one night, Tara calls Zoe and she says, "He's going to kill me if I tell. He's going to kill me." And Zoe's like, "Who are you talking about? Who's going to kill you?" She says, "Professor Fosca." And Professor Fosca is her, of course, professor, but she also is in a secret society which Fosca tutors, a group of 6 women. And she is one of those women. And the next day, the police suddenly find Tara's body and she is found dead. Zoe instantly calls her aunt, Mariana, and she's bawling. She's like, "I don't know what's going on." She said he was gonna murder her. And Mariana is a psychotherapist, so she does group therapy. She instantly becomes intrigued and she wants to know what's going on. Who is Fosca? Why was she part of this secret society? And so Mariana makes the trip over to St. Christopher College, and the dean has actually asked her, "Will you stay? You could be a vital part of our investigation. Maybe you can help us figure out who done it." And the interesting part about the crime scene is there is no murder weapon. There are no traces left of the suspect, and so the police just resolve to, well, it has to be her boyfriend. Even though the police find no murder weapon, they find no evidence in his apartment, they still arrest him. And her boyfriend presumes to be innocent, at least we think. So Mariana and Zoe are trying to figure out, who is this Professor Fosca? Why does he have this secret society? Why does he have this secret society? Apparently, him and Tara had something kind of secretive going on as well, which of course pulls us into he did it. So Mariana and Zoe sit down and they say, well, how can we get to know Professor Fosca better? And he actually holds a Greek lecture that day. So they go to the lecture and he actually talks about Tara, which was kind of surprising. After the lecture was held, Mariana and Zoe approach him, and Professor Fosca agrees, or him and Mariana agree to meet up and have kind of a one-on-one chat over coffee. So they meet the next day, and Fosca is he's very sly. He kind of has a little bit of charm to him, and him and Mariana start talking, and he's like, "I'm very intrigued by you. You kind of leave me questioning." And he really seems into Mariana, but she tries to just, stay professional. At the end of their meeting, he kisses her. I was like, what? This guy had the nerve. Whatever. It gets crazy next when Mariana gets a call from Zoe. She goes, "It happened again." Mariana's like, "What happened again?" "Another murder." Oh my god. Now we have 2 murders that happen on campus, and not to mention the second murder is of another girl in his secret society called the Maidens. And it was such a horrific murder. Oh my gosh. The super trigger warning about that. She was cut from the back. She was stabbed 22 times, and there's a pine cone. We don't know what the pine cone's about, but there was a pine cone at Tara's murder scene, and there's a pine cone at her murder scene. Like, what the heck is up with pine cone? So that's where we're at. I just finished that part. We just found out that Veronica is the name of the girl. She was part of the secret society, one of Professor Fosca's students. We need to know what the hell is going on. Why are just his students and his secret society the ones being murdered? Documenting it now, it is 6:25. Let's see how long it takes to finish this book. What you doing, bud? I forgot to mention is that periodically throughout the book there are these really small chapters, and we're getting a glimpse at someone. We don't know who. I'm pretty sure it's the killer, but it's documenting kind of their life. And so far we've learned that his parents were not the nicest, especially his father. This chapter we just learned about his father was abusive to the mom. She just didn't have the guts to leave. So we're learning about the killer at the same time as learning about what's going on in this investigation. It's pretty crazy. I haven't ever read a book where you learn about the childhood of the killer at the same time as present day murder scenes. Yikes. Another thing that I forgot to mention that's actually been a pretty big part of this book is Mariana and Sebastian. So Sebastian was her husband, and he died while they were on a beach trip by drowning. But throughout this book, she's continuing to see glimpses of Sebastian and their love story, and it keeps repeating and repeating. I'm just like, why do we keep seeing glimpses of Sebastian? What is up with Sebastian? Is Sebastian still alive? Do we not know if he actually drowned? Of course, we have to have our corny dog. Okay, so we just found out that the last time that Veronica was sighted was with the professor. Mariana just went to the director of the play that she was supposed to be in, and he said the last time that he saw her was with Fosca. Mariana went and looked in Veronica's wardrobe, and she found a postcard. Now, when Tara passed away, Mariana went to Tara's dorm and she found a postcard that was a picture, and on the back of it had a Greek poem / saying, and it was all related to a Greek play and Greek tragedy. And it's the same exact situation for Veronica. She found one of those same postcards with a different Greek writing on it, and it deals with coming to terms with death. So there is a lot related to both of their deaths. Okay, some more crazy crap just went down. So Mariana and Fosca had a dinner planned for tonight, and she went to his dorm, I guess, apartment, I don't know, and they're having dinner there, and she looks down at the table and she sees a pine cone. Now y'all remember there was a pine cone at the scene of Tara and Veronica when they died, and she says, what is that for? What does that symbolize? And he said it symbolizes a commitment to looking inside and finding your soul, and he's offering it to Mariana, and she says no thanks. Is this guy crazy? They were talking about their childhood during dinner, and Fosca said that his father was very abusive and he did not have a very good relationship with his father. In the diaries, within the chapters, the last diary that we learned was that his father was abusive. Are we connecting them? Is this a clue? Is this a fake clue? I don't know. It's all pointing to him though. Well, that was a lot to process. We just looked at another diary, and this diary talked about when the person was younger, they had a favorite dog named Rex, and the dad ended up killing his dog because the mom stood up and said, I will do anything for that dog. And the main character in this diary had to go bury his favorite dog, and then he had dreams of just wanting to murder and kill his father because of stuff like that. So, whew, this is very deep. So another crazy thing about this story is that there's so many running lines, and We don't know how they're all going to come together. But the very first time that Mariana meets with Fosca, she goes back to the college and she says that she feels like she's being followed and she can hear these footsteps behind her, and she tries to run, but the footsteps follow her. And that's where that storyline cut off. Well, this chapter just ended with Mariana got a random phone call from an unknown number, and it said, "Mariana, I'm watching you." And she said, "Who is this?" And the line went dead. So there are these little puzzle pieces, these little lines, these stories going on, and we're trying to figure out how the hell all of these come together. I think one of the coolest things just happened in the book. So Mariana went to go see her supervisor who watched over her and helped her while she was working on becoming a therapist. And her name is Ruth. And Ruth suggested that she should go meet with Theo Faber. And if you read The Silent Patient, you know who that is. And you know how crazy twisted that story was. So I'm so excited because Alex just put one of the characters in one of his books in this book. During Mariana and Theo's meeting, Theo convinces her that both of these deaths have to be some type of show. And they relate it back to one of the plays called The Duchess of Malfi. Cover her face, mine eyes dazzle. And Theo says, yes, mine eyes dazzle, to blind us with horror. And why? It's because they want to put on a show for us. I really like the way that they ended the chapter, because Mariana tells him about this position open at the Grove, and he said that Alicia Berenson, she's there, right? She's the famous painter who won't talk, and she suggests that he should apply for the position. Okay, so Mariana just got back to her room and she opens the door and it's been ransacked. All of her clothes are everywhere, everything's just thrown, and so she calls the police up. It doesn't look like anybody has stolen anything, it doesn't look like a burglary, and they say, well, have you upset another student? Then she looks down at her desk and someone has carved a cross onto her desk. And so she just assures the police officer, I'm sure everything's fine, and she dismisses them. There is something about this carved cross on her desk that is important. This is just going crazy. Oh my God. So we are back to the diaries of, I'm assuming, the suspect and their childhood, and we just learned that the mom pulled the child aside and said that I'm choosing to leave, and unfortunately you can't come with me. And all of a sudden the child's thinking and thoughts start turning, and they realize that the mom must be really selfish, the mom must be punished. She stood up for the dog, but she didn't stand up for me. She watched me get tortured. This is just crazy. This is just absolutely insane. We just finished chapter 12, and Mariana asked Fosca if she could have a group therapy meeting with all of the maidens. This next chapter is a little bit crazy because Mariana meets with all of the maidens at a coffee shop, but this chapter ends with them grabbing an extra chair and bringing it to the group. And Mariana's like, what are you doing? And the girls say, well, you left somebody out. She's like, well, who is missing from the group? And they say, well, apparently you must not know her that well. It's your niece, Zoe. I've always been a little bit suspicious of Zoe because she was the first person, or one of the first people, it seemed like, to find out about Tara's death. And then she instantly called Mariana when she found out that Veronica had died as well. So it feels like Zoe is in on all of this news, and she knows it like right when it happens. I feel like she's really close to the source, or she knows the source. Another storyline that started really early on within the book is that when Mariana went to St. Christopher College to meet up with Zoe after Tara's death, there was this random stranger on the train, and he kept staring at her. And she was like, why is this guy staring at me? Well, they get off the train together, and he tells her, one day you're gonna marry me. She's like, oh, you're crazy, you're crazy. Well, that guy's name is Fred, and when she gets to St. Christopher College, she meets back up with him. It seems like she really just needs a friend to confide in, but they end up kind of being like detectives together. She's telling him all about the case, what's going on. She's keeping him up to date. Well, this chapter just ended with she went to his room and they had some wine together, and he confessed his love for her, and she's like, I just want to be alone right now. And that's kind of where it leaves off right now. It's a really weird love story in my opinion because it's been very long, and for him to be absolutely in love with this complete stranger, like they don't even have a past together, so it's just a little strange to me in my opinion. After the little date at Fred's apartment, she goes back to her place at the college and she feels like somebody is following her. She turns around, it's one of her patients back in London that she was doing group therapy for. She has not gone back to London because she's been at the college this whole time trying to deal with the whole Tara and Veronica situation. She abandoned her patients in London and this guy followed her and he had a knife. And she said, put the knife down. And he said, I want to end my life right here, right now. Well, suddenly someone attacks him, takes a knife from him. There's a little bit of a fumble and he gets arrested. It kind of seems like maybe he might have been the person to ransack her apartment. We don't know. But one of her crazy patients back from London now knows where she is and tracked her down and was stalking her. Oh my God, it just got crazy. Even crazier than I expected. So Mariana goes to sleep and the maid of the room wakes her up and she says, ma'am, I have some news. Another girl has been murdered, and it was Serena, one of the maidens, of course. But then she says, I have something for you. This was left by your door. It's a postcard with Greek writing on the back. Does that mean that whoever the murderer is, hands the postcard to the next victim? Is that what the trend is? Because all of the victims have had postcards with Greek writing on the back. Does that mean Mariana's gonna get killed next? We don't know. This is crazy. Okay, next we see that Mariana goes out into the courtyard and the first person that she sees is Fosca. She runs up to him, she goes, what is this? And she's holding the postcard. And he tells her, it means the gods have willed your death, and soon from your throat streams of blood shall gust forth at the sword. All of a sudden, Mariana starts punching him, and the cops have to hold her back. And she goes, you sick bastard. Now Mariana and Zoe are talking, and Mariana's asking her, were you part of the Maidens, and what happened? And Zoe says, I was only there for one meeting, and the meeting was actually her initiation into the Maidens. And pretty much he took her across the river, he blindfolded her, he made her drink something that was spiked, and then he took the blindfold off and he put a knife up to her throat. He didn't cut her, but he said it was just a ritual sacrifice. And Zoe said, and that's when I saw where he put the knife. He slid it into a gap in the wall between two stone slabs. So that's where they think the murder weapon is. And then the chapter ends with Zoe dropping a postcard into Mariana's lap because she received one too. In the next chapter, Mariana goes to Zoe's room, and while Zoe's taking a shower, and one of Zoe's stuffed animals falls off her bed. And she notices that the stitches are kind of missing out of the belly, and so she kind of moves the stitches a little bit and she sees a note. And the note is in the same writing as some of the diaries of the chapters that we've read. So whoever wrote the note is also the person that we've been following their diaries in their childhood. And the note pretty much says, this person will do anything to be with Zoe. It says, we will be together, I promise, one day, once my plan is complete, my brilliant, beautiful idea. I must warn you, it involves blood and sacrifice. I'll explain when we are alone. Until then, have faith. Yours forever, X. Next chapter, they go to the place where Zoe remembers Fosca putting the knife, and she holds up the knife, and Mariana confesses, I read the letter. Zoe says, what letter? And she pulls out the letter, and she said, I don't understand. It doesn't mean, it can't possibly mean that you had something to do with these murders, that you and he are somehow involved. You and Edward Fosca. And she goes, you think Fosca did this? Who wrote the letter, Zoe? Sebastian, of course. Sebastian's still alive? Was that a note from the past? Zoe says, I loved him, Mariana. I loved him. It's true, I've been in love with Sebastian ever since I can remember, ever since I was a little girl, and he loved me. You have to face it now. Open your eyes. We were lovers. We were lovers ever since that trip to Greece. Mariana began to laugh. No, you're lying to yourself. Sebastian never loved you. It was me he loved, always me. He only married you to be near me and for the money, of course. You know that. "I'm not listening to this," said Mariana. She turned and walked out. Then she started to run. "What the heck is going on?" "Oh my God." "What have you done, Zoe?" said Mariana. "Not me, him. It was all Sebastian. I just did what he told me to. It was a labor of love. I copied out the quotes he selected, planted the postcards like he said, underlined the passages in Fosca's book. When I had a supervision, I pretended to go to the bathroom and I planted some of Tara's head in the back of Fosca's wardrobe." "So you mean to tell me Fosca is innocent? You framed him?" "No," Zoe said, "you framed him. Sebastian said all I had to do was make you think I was afraid of Fosca. You did the rest. That was the funniest part of this whole performance, watching you play detective. You're not the detective, you're the victim. Mariana, you killed them, those girls, how could you?" "The Maidens were never important, Mariana. They were just a distraction." "That's what Sebastian said. Tara was difficult, but Sebastian said it was a sacrifice I had to make. He was right. It was a relief in a way." "A relief?" "To finally see myself clearly, I know who I am." "No, you're wrong," Mariana said. "You're not a goddess, Zoe. You're a monster." "If I am," said Zoe, "Sebastian made me one, and so did you." And Mariana felt a sudden force to her back. She was knocked to the ground with Zoe on her back. Mariana struggled, but Zoe used all of her weight, pinning Mariana down in the mud. The earth was cold and wet against Mariana's face, and she heard Zoe whispering in her ear, "Tomorrow, when they find your body, I'll say to the inspector I tried to stop you, that I begged you not to investigate the Foley alone, but you insisted." Zoe climbed off Mariana and flipped her onto her back. She loomed over her, raising the knife. Her eyes were wild. "And you'll be remembered as just another of Fosca's victims. Victim number 4. No one will ever guess the truth that we killed you, Sebastian and I." She raised the knife higher, about to strike, and Mariana suddenly found her strength. She reached up and grabbed Zoe's arm. They tussled for a moment before Mariana swung Zoe's hand as hard as she could, making Zoe lose control of the knife. The knife flew out of her hand and whizzed through the air, disappearing into the nearby grass with a thud. Zoe leaped up with a cry and ran to look for it. While Zoe searched, Mariana pulled herself up and noticed someone appearing behind the trees. It was Fred. He was hurrying over, looking concerned. He didn't see Zoe kneeling in the grass, and Mariana tried to warn him. "Fred, stop, stop." But Fred didn't stop and quickly reached her. "Are you okay? I followed you. I was worried." And over his shoulder, Mariana saw Zoe rising up, clutching the knife. Mariana screamed, "Fred!" But too late. Zoe plunged the knife deep into Fred's back. His eyes widened and he stared at Mariana in shock. He collapsed and sank to the ground and lay there still, unmoving. A pool of blood seeped out from under him. Zoe pulled out the knife and prodded Fred with it, checking if he was dead. She didn't look convinced. Without thinking, Mariana closed her hand around a hard, cold rock that was embedded in the mud. She pulled it out. She staggered over to Zoe, bending over Fred's body. Just as Zoe was about to thrust the knife into his chest, Mariana slammed down the rock on the back of Zoe's head. The blow knocked Zoe sideways as she fell. Slipping in the mud, she landed face down on the knife. Zoe lay still for a second. Mariana thought she was dead. But then, with an animal-like groan, Zoe threw herself onto her back. She lay there, a wounded creature with wide, scared eyes. She saw the impaled knife sticking out of her chest, and Zoe started to scream. She didn't stop screaming. She was hysterical, screaming in agony and fear and horror, the screams of a terrified child. For the first time in her life, Mariana didn't go to Zoe's aid. Instead, she pulled out her phone. She called for the police. All the time, Zoe kept screaming until eventually her screams merged with the wail of an approaching siren. The story ends with Zoe being taken away, and she is charged with attempted murder because Fred actually did survive the attack. And Fosca was fired from the college because turns out he was sleeping with all of the maidens. Mariana started to feel like she had a better sense of herself, and she started to feel like she could see the world a lot clearer. Okay, wow, I just finished the book. It is now 9:40, so I read half that book in about 2.5 hours. I zoomed through that book. That is easily the most thrilling book. It is definitely my number one favorite new thriller. I've never read such a such a crazy book. The setting, the way that Alex describes the setting of almost every scene, it makes me feel like I was there. I love the characters, they were believable. If I could change anything about this book, and this is really just personal opinion, I would take out the Greek mythology, Greek play, tragedy, all that stuff out. One, because I don't understand it. I'm not interested in any of it. And that was kind of a part in it. It dealt with like identity and what was going to happen in the story and what was written on the postcard. It was still an easy story to follow, and I kind of suspected that it was Zoe because, like I said, she was the first person to know whenever the Maidens were killed. And like on Tara's death, she called Mariana pretty shortly after it happened. She almost called Mariana like directly after Veronica was killed. For Zoe to be that aware and know exactly when those things would happen, well, it makes sense now because she was the murderer. Overall, I really hope that you enjoyed this reading vlog with me. I hope that you enjoyed the journey through this book. I'm sorry that it wasn't a full reading vlog. I hope that I can do one of those someday. I knew 30% through this book that I needed to do this reading vlog because this story was so thrilling, so crazy, and I'm really glad that I did at least try to do this mini vlog.